Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. Um, I would like to kind of pick your brains. What I'd like to do in the next hour is to provide you with some training and education around a couple of different topics. I'm actually going to cover basic workplace safety on campus, workplace violence prevention just lightly, some de-escalation tips and tools, and then also just your basic strategies on how to survive an active shooter. I'm going to do this in a unique way today because I did not know we were in the process of purchasing an updated version of one of our training videos from a company called the Center for Personal Protection and Safety. And I found out yesterday that the purchase went through and I got my copy yesterday. So you will be the first team on the Harborview campus to see this. I have already reviewed it before we purchased it, and it's really good material to provide you with all kinds of tools. If there is anything specific that, like one of your colleagues just mentioned, how to sign up for the alerts, for stat info advisory, how to get those for if we have an active shooter on our property or inside of our buildings, I will cover that here shortly. But if there's any other questions or topics that you have interest that you want to make sure that I am able to provide you some feedback and guidance on, feel free to raise your hand, unmute, and let's cover that first. And that way I can make sure that I cover all the material that you all are looking forward to today. Okay, I got something in the chat here. Yes, that's one of the reasons you guys are going to get to see the new training video first. It's about 25 minutes long because it specifically talks about de-escalation strategies on handling hostile patients and hostile visitors. So yes, that will be covered. Thank you. All right, well, if you think of something, just feel free to put it in the chat. Other than that, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started with some of the first material. For those of you who your role requires you to go through orientation at University of Washington OD&T, this will look somewhat familiar. This is part of the content that I provide for new staff hiring onto the Harborview campus. And it's just some basic strategies on workplace safety here at Harborview and what you can do to be safe. I'm going to skip over my why that I've been here for 20 years, and I'm going to go straight to when to call security. I will say that these are really challenging times. Staff have really been struggling with everything that's been going on in the city. The increase in some of the criminal activity that we've been seeing, the police department struggling with staffing issues that's affected some of their responses to our lower level crimes. It's been a real challenge. So we're really encouraging staff here on the campus to really lean on our security team because we're really your first line of defense to help you in being safe. If you look on your photo IDs, if you have the Harborview ID attached to it, there should be what's called a WISHA code card. It has all the WISHA emergency codes on one side, and on the other side, it has the most commonly used phone numbers at Harborview. If you don't have that, I will talk to Christine about getting some more of those from our parking department and where we get our photo IDs, and so you can have that on your photo ID. There should be a non-emergency and an emergency number to security so that if you ever need us, you can call us and have us assist you. We never tell staff that if they feel like they need the police, they shouldn't call. If you feel like you need 911, then by all means, you call 911. We ask that you just call us too afterwards and let us know what's going on because we're the closest ones to get to you and assist you and help you. When you call, just be really brief. Start with who you are and where you are. So that if any reason you're calling from a cell phone or there's an interruption of the call, maybe you're in your car in the parking garage at Pat Steele and you just parked and you see somebody walking in between cars looking in windows and you want to call and report that. You have a drop call, tell us who you are and where you are first. Then going into stating the problem, what's going on, what are you seeing, what's happening. The reason I say that is because we triage our calls just like a clinician will triage care. Based on how many officers we have on duty, We send the amount of number of officers based on how serious the event is. Now, fortunately for you, there are 2 officers assigned to the Pat Steele building. So you actually already have 2 designated officers, but we can always send more to Pat Steele if we feel like we need that, and we have certainly done that before in the past. There's a lot of things that have been on the mind of staff this particular year, this calendar year. Certainly, the pandemic was brutal on all of us. It was very difficult. I was just telling Christine before we started that I'm just hearing so many of my colleagues and friends who are just going through so many difficult things in their own personal life, and they come and try to do the job that we do here, and it's just been a real weight on anyone and everyone. But I really have continued to encourage staff to make sure that they are doing basic safety things to be safe coming to and from work. So some of those safety tips are if you're commuting on public transportation, the bus, the train, or the ferry, don't put your photo ID on until you actually get to the Pat Steele building. But the number one thing I'm encouraging staff to do is to pay attention to your surroundings. Trust your instincts, be aware when you're out on the streets, when you're commuting. Do not have earbuds in your ears listening to music or your favorite podcast. I mean, I love music and I love podcasts, but I only listen to that stuff in my car, my office, or my house. When I'm out in the world and I'm outside of a building, I want my head up. I'm scanning back and forth. I'm paying attention. Yes, I will make glancing eye contact with people on the street, 1 second eye contact to let them know I see you. I see how far away you are. I'm really paying attention to what's going on around me because the world's changed. It really has. This calendar year has been very difficult. There have been 2 events this year that have been really, really challenging for the staff on the Harborview campus. The first one happened back in May, and that was one of our nurses who've been here 20, 25 years. She commutes by the light rail, and she was coming to work one morning like she does every morning, and she was getting off the light rail, and she got off the light rail and started walking up the concrete steps to get up to the street level. And a guy who was on the light rail rode the escalator to the top. And when she got to the top, he came up behind her, picked her up, and threw her down the concrete staircase. You can actually watch this on Cairo News or on Twitter about a Harborview nurse being assaulted at the light rail. I had a difficult time watching the news footage of it myself because I know who it was. And it was really hard to watch somebody that we know get injured like that. What was difficult about the case is that this particular person had 22 previous assaults on the streets of Seattle against citizens, just random attacks for no reason. The person suffered from mental health issues and homelessness and addiction issues, and was just not doing well, not staying engaged in care. And that event really kind of shook staff up here. The next event that really shook staff up was on June 1st in Oklahoma. There was an active shooter event that happened at a medical clinic in Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma. A patient at that clinic was upset about their care, and they went to a gun store before their clinic appointment and bought several guns and went straight to the clinic and shot and killed 4 of the healthcare workers. Now, what shook up staff here at Harborview so much about that event was that the physician who was killed was a Harborview ortho doc. He trained here. And so people knew him. And that was really, really difficult for us. Literally within a week after that event occurred, over the next 30 days, I had 18, 19 different requests from 18, 19 different departments asking for active shooter training, which I provided. And I get it. I get it. When something like this happens, we can have a knee-jerk reaction out of fear, but it was also a request to say, hey, I want to be prepared. I want to know what to do. I know there's no guarantees in life, so teach me what I need to do if something like this were to happen here so I survive. It's been a really challenging year because there's also been several other events that have happened around the Tri-County area. Bus station in Bellevue. There was a horrific assault and murder down in Pioneer Square, not Pioneer Square, Pike Place Market a few months back, before the weather was still warm. Um, just without warning, unprovoked, didn't know the person, just physical attacks on the streets for no reason. And so this is why I really am encouraging staff, please don't have headphones and earbuds and things on. I want all your senses up. I want you paying attention. If you're able to commute to and from work in groups, van pool, carpool, meet people at park and rides. If you're taking the different portals of transportation, meet people down on Third Avenue from the bus, the train, the ferry, and walk up and down the downtown corridor in groups. If you're able to do that, that is always going to be a lot safer to move in groups. This actually benefited a Harborview coworker at the beginning of this week. A staff member down on Third Avenue who was going home, coming to work, was waiting for the bus to ride up the hill on Third Avenue with several other employees, and a person unknown walked up behind one of our staff and grabbed her and tried to take her cell phone and knocked her to the ground. And two other staff got her cell phone back and helped her up and brought her up to our emergency room. And that was just this week. So I don't want to sound doom and gloom. What I want to do is focus on the urgency for us all to become stakeholders in our own personal safety, and to really be aware as we're commuting to and from our different places and portals of transportation. When you're not at work and you are going shopping or buying gas, pay attention to what's going on around you. Be prepared to react, so that if you see a crime in progress, then by all means call the police. A lot of staff who commute to and from work will wear tennis shoes and bring their dress shoes or work shoes, because they want to be in footwear that's where they can move quickly and easily if they're on the light rail, the train, or the bus. And then, the most important thing I can tell you is to simply pay attention to your instincts. Trust yourself. If something doesn't feel right, if the hair on the back of your neck is standing up, you're getting a funny feeling in your stomach, I want you to pay attention to that and be aware of what's going on around you, so that you have an opportunity to make a difference. If you need to change directions, go across the street, go into a convenience store, buy a bottle of water, come back out, whatever you need to do, but pay attention to what's going on around you, because these are very, very difficult times. Same goes for those of you who do drive and park at Pat Steele or on campus. In terms of protecting your own personal property, when you do park your car, take 60 seconds, take everything out of plain sight, unplug cell phone chargers, take down navigation, make sure there is nothing in plain view, and that somebody can look through your window and see something that they may want, that they can, hawk at a pawn shop for a quick buck. Take 60 seconds and take everything out of plain sight. We're moving into that part of the year where some people shop differently than the rest of us for the holidays. So make sure you are always taking steps to protect your personal property and the property here for our organization. We are encouraging all staff, because it is part of our regulatory requirements, and we're actually in our window now for inspection for Department of Health and Joint Commission is all coming up. If there is any event that happens on campus where somebody verbally threatens you or you are physically assaulted, please make sure that you're doing documentation. If you have access to our PSN system, we want you to do a PSN. If you don't, you can simply tell one of our security officers and he will write the report, or she will write the report for you. And then, of course, in reacting to any potential danger on campus, don't stay anywhere where you think somebody is escalating to that point of violence. Remove yourself, get to a safe location, and give us a call and have us respond and help you. As I mentioned, we have 2 officers for that building, so we're there usually during business hours with 2 officers, and we can respond and assist you. I am going to go through a Code Silver training video. It's merged into a flow of education that starts with workplace safety, goes into workplace violence prevention, and then talks about response strategies for an active shooter. The program that we have here at Harborview is the Run, Hide, Fight program. That is the video you're going to watch here shortly from the Center for Personal Protection and Safety. It's based on a basic strategy of developing what we call the survivor's mindset. And that mindset is simply, in the event of a crisis where somebody is actively shooting people, or you get notification that there's a shooting occurring on the campus or in the building or near you, you have three basic strategies. Depending on how close you are to the event, we want you to either run and put distance between where you and the shooting is occurring, hide and barricade in your office or location where you're at, preferably with other staff. And then the challenge is, if it happens right in front of you, then you have to decide whether or not you want to fight for your life. As was asked by one of your staff here at the very beginning, we have an emergency notification system here called Stat Info Advisory. So if you want to jot this down or take a picture of this screen, you go online to departments.washington.edu/statinfo, and you can put your cell phone number into a database called Stat Info Advisory UW Medicine. And in the event we ever have an active shooter on our campus, you would then get a text message notification when that event occurs that tells you the location, what the shooter looks like, so that you can make good decisions about your own safety and which strategy are you going to use. This is really key and helpful. So if you left work for lunch and you decide, oh, I'm going to go off campus to one of these little businesses up here on Broadway for lunch, and then you get a text message while you're walking back that there's an event at Pat Steele, or an event at the main hospital, or an event at 9th and Jefferson Building, then you can make decisions on how you want to respond and what you feel is in the best interest of your safety. And that's really the best way to handle a situation like that, is that we have to make sure that everybody is allowed to do what is in their own best interest. We're not going to tell you what to do. We're going to tell you what are the best practices for responding to an active shooter and what you need to do to be safe. All right. I have a statement in the chat. This is much more likely to be used for other emergency. No, it will only be used for extreme forms of violence on the campus, property, in our buildings, or an actual active shooter on the property or in our buildings. It's not like UW Alerts. Some of you may have already signed up for UW Alerts, and on UW Alerts, you will get text notifications on all kinds of criminal activity, robberies, break-ins, strong arm robberies on the street, all kinds of stuff up by the college. Ours is built on the same platform, but we're not going to be using it for that. So, whoops, sorry about that. Getting ready to load up the video here for you guys to watch. Want to be able to answer any questions before we start. Okay. We're going to cover three topics that this company, we purchased their videos because they're in alignment with our organization's strategies on how we reduce and mitigate the risk of violence on our campus. And congratulations, all 23 of you will be the very first to see this video, the first to get this new training. So let's watch this, and then there should be time at the end to also answer questions. So if you have questions as you're watching the video, feel free to jot those down, and we'll make sure that we try to get that all answered before we close. So here we go.
Workplace Violence Prevention and Response Awareness e-learning course for healthcare providers. Violence in healthcare is a serious problem that has increased in frequency over the past decade. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, healthcare and social services personnel are 5 times more likely to experience workplace violence than staff in other occupations. Odds are you either have or will encounter a situation like this. No matter your role, whether you work in a clinical environment, conduct in-home care, provide administrative support, or coordinate services elsewhere, this course will equip you with the tools needed to help keep your workplace safe. Your commitment to ethical and professional conduct significantly contributes to a positive work environment for your coworkers and for your patients. This is one of the best ways to keep our workplaces free from violence and fear. This course is broken into 3 sections: violence awareness and prevention, de-escalation, and extreme violence response. In these sections, we'll cover 6 main components: defining workplace violence and what it can look like in a healthcare setting, identifying warning signs that someone may be progressing toward violence, Once observed, how to report a concern. The indicators that someone may be in an intimate partner violence relationship and how to address it. The core principles of de-escalation and how to respond effectively to extreme violence like an active shooter. So what is workplace violence? It's often associated with an active shooter, and although that's certainly a disturbing reality, it includes much more. Workplace violence consists of any act or threat of violence occurring at a workplace. It could involve staff, licensed practitioners, patients, or visitors, and include verbal, nonverbal, written, or physical aggression, threatening, intimidating, harassing, or humiliating words or actions, bullying, sabotage, sexual harassment, and physical assaults. Any one of these can cause significant psychological trauma and stress, even if no physical injury takes place. It's safe to say that few people come into a hospital because they want to be there. That means the interactions you have with patients and visitors may begin with a high level of anxiety or disruptive behavior. As a healthcare provider, you are most likely to encounter workplace violence with patients or visitors who become verbally or physically aggressive. However, it's important to remember that these individuals are not the only potential source of workplace violence. Your fellow staff members can also be a source of workplace violence. Healthcare professionals are not immune from making threats, bullying, or even committing extreme violence. With that said, the most challenging group to deal with in a healthcare setting may be those we call intruders. Intruders are individuals who are seeking to exact revenge on a doctor or a staff member or a perceived lack of care. It could also be a patient's abusive spouse in violation of a court restraining order or a gang member intent on finishing a fight. The beginning of awareness is understanding the spectrum of workplace violence. At the extreme edge of the spectrum is death. If shots are fired, if someone begins shooting people in your workplace, there are things you can do to increase your chances of surviving. But the reality is, you're reacting, not preventing. At the next level down are behaviors that clearly represent physical violence. From there, we see a transition from physical violence to psychological and emotional violence. In this part of the spectrum are behaviors such as intimidation, stalking, bullying, and making threats, both direct and implied. While these behaviors don't amount to physical violence, they are still destructive to the workplace. Since the path toward violence is almost always an evolutionary one, with signposts along the way, we want you to be able to recognize that there are sometimes subtle but important indicators that point to the possibility that violence could be brewing in your workplace. In general, behaviors of concern are disruptive, aggressive, hostile, or emotionally abusive conduct that generate anxiety or create a climate of distrust, and which adversely affect productivity and morale. Examples include prolonged anger, holding grudges, hypersensitivity to criticism, blaming others, collecting injustices, preoccupation with violent themes, obsessions, extreme anxiety, or visible distress and isolation. You're more likely to observe behaviors of concern at an earlier stage with coworkers and staff than with patients and visitors. And although dealing with distressed patients can be difficult, we'll cover some of the things you can do to provide care without escalating the situation further. Some behaviors of concern might not look like they could lead to violence, such as sadness. However, if sadness continues over an extended period of time, it probably needs more attention, if only to help someone in need. If not addressed, sadness may evolve into a serious depression and the potential for suicide. A person in this desperate emotional state may not only pose a threat to themselves, but also to others in the workplace. Sometimes there's a stereotype associated with a workplace violence offender, that they were a loner. But some people are just quiet by nature and may enjoy solitude. If someone changes, if someone who is usually friendly and outgoing suddenly becomes quiet and disengaged, that change is a behavior of concern. Remember, you're not trying to decide when something has become dangerous. By then, it might be too late. Your responsibility is to recognize and respond to behaviors that, if left unchecked, might lead to violence. Likewise, stalking and domestic violence can spill over from someone's personal life into their professional life. We've all read about high-profile stalking situations, individuals who harass, follow, and threaten celebrities or other public figures. But stalking occurs most commonly in the context of a relationship involving domestic violence. That said, stalking can also occur between strangers or acquaintances. Domestic violence is defined as a pattern of behavior in which one intimate partner uses physical violence, intimidation, threats, emotional, sexual, or economic abuse to control the other partner in a relationship. While at work, you may observe victims of domestic violence receiving disruptive phone calls and emails, displaying discomfort when communicating with others, anxiety and a lack of concentration on the job, unexplained bruises or injuries, or inappropriate clothing for the time of year. However, it's important to note that your patients are not the only potential victims. It could happen to your coworkers as well. Frequent work absences, unplanned use of leave time, and disruptive visits to the workplace by a current or former intimate partner are all potential signs a coworker may be in an abusive relationship. Because domestic violence often spills over into the workplace, you should report signs of domestic violence just as you would any other behavior of concern. There are many ways to report what you've witnessed, to include security, human resources, and risk management. But be sure to follow notification procedures as outlined in your respective policy guidance. Where possible, reports will be kept confidential. Healthcare facilities have the right and in some cases the obligation to report certain violations to appropriate law enforcement. Be assured, any form of retaliation against someone who reports or cooperates in an investigation won't be tolerated. Support for victims and witnesses affected by workplace violence, including trauma and psychological counseling, may be available if necessary. So why is it investigators often learn in the aftermath of a violent event that people knew the situation was dangerous but took no action? Because there can be roadblocks to taking action, such as lack of awareness. People who haven't been trained to recognize behaviors of concern won't have the awareness needed to respond. And there are psychological barriers too. Some people worry about being seen as a busybody or a gossip. Others are worried about retaliation, which is why confidential reporting systems can be so valuable. And sometimes people fail to take action because they think it's someone else's responsibility. But it's not. Remember, you're part of the team, you're part of the response, and you're part of the solution. Now that we've covered what constitutes workplace violence, your role in keeping the workplace safe, and how to identify and report early warning signs, let's look at the concept of de-escalation. There are a few attitudes you can embody that help prevent situations from escalating in the first place. It may sound like common sense, but it's important to demonstrate respect for every individual, be a proactive listener, and be mentally and physically prepared. This includes managing your personal space and maintaining self-control. These behaviors not only help prevent situations from escalating, they also contribute to better working environments for your coworkers and your patients and visitors. Even if you embody these attitudes, you may still find yourself needing to cool a heated encounter. Let's look at an example.
Good morning, Victoria. How are you feeling today?
Not very good. My stomach still really hurts.
What the hell's the matter with you people? Where have you been? I've been here a week and you still have no idea what's wrong with my daughter.
Sir, I'm sorry. I understand that you're upset.
You can understand? How could you possibly understand? Is your kid in the hospital? Do you have a bunch of idiots trying to treat her? We've been here a week and you've barely checked on her.
My mom was in the hospital last year, so I get it. But you have to remember, it takes time to diagnose problems like this, and...
Are you seriously about to lecture me right now? My kid is in the hospital and you're not doing anything to help her. See, now you made Vicky cry.
Listen, I get it, but don't call me an idiot. I'm just doing my job.
No, you're not. I see you out of that nurse's station gabbing with your friends instead of helping my kid.
Sir, you need to calm down.
Calm down? Are you serious? I'll help you calm down.
Whoa, hey, we need security in here.
So what went wrong here? The nurse tried to connect with the father by sympathizing with him. She tried relating to him by telling her own story. And when the father continued to grow more upset, she tried to put an end to this clearly unacceptable behavior. Let's take a look at some of the core concepts of de-escalation and see if we can identify what the nurse could have done better. One of the most important tools for preventing violence is good communication. Often, those who act out violently do so out of frustration because they don't feel they're being heard. If one of your patients or coworkers is obviously upset, there are key strategies you can employ to become a calming influence in a distressed situation. Attempts to find a solution to a problem can be hampered by misunderstandings, emotions, and taking things personally. When confronting a distressed personality, keep in mind that any situation can be perceived as a slight or threat to their emotional, psychological, and physical well-being. Not only can this behavior be threatening, it can also be a warning sign the person is losing self-control. When talking to someone who is upset, there are a few key strategies that you can use to become a reassuring influence. Verbal communication techniques that are clear and calm include volume, keep from raising your voice; tone, speak calmly and demonstrate empathy; speed, keep your speech slower, don't rush your words; inflection, be aware of which words or syllables you're emphasizing. In addition to verbal communication techniques, you can also leverage your body language to make a difference. Maintain a relaxed and alert stance. Minimize standing directly in front of the person. Keep your hands down and open. Avoid pointing your finger. Use slower and more deliberate movement. Don't be exaggerated or excessive. Be genuine. Don't fake a smile or other expressions that could be interpreted as sarcastic or a slight to the individual. In addition to verbal communication and body language, remember to also be respectful and supportive of a person's issues and problems. Use your understanding of behaviors of concern to detect and intervene early. Respond to an individual's expressed problems or conditions. Set clear limits to follow. And implement environmental controls, such as minimizing lighting and noise when possible. When confronted with a difficult person, our first instinct may be to try to control them. In reality, though, you can't control another person's behavior. What you can control is your own behavior in situations where de-escalation is required. And it's in this mental state where people tend to say and do things that often makes the situation worse. This is the time to gain your composure and re-engage your rational thought processes so you can better influence a situation. Keep in mind that while conflict can't always be resolved, it can be managed. But if you can't control yourself, you won't be able to manage the situation. As you talk to an emotionally charged person, keep a calm and composed demeanor. The most important thing is to do as little talking as possible and employ all of your listening skills. Subsequently, when someone begins to lose control of their emotions, it's often aggravated by the perception that no one is listening to them or cares about a situation they find intolerable. Likewise, if you try to talk them out of their feelings or attempt to explain away or justify your own position, you're, in a sense, invalidating their feelings and situation, which only makes matters worse. Attempt to see things from their perspective while being empathetic. Empathy is a powerful display of listening. Use expressions such as, "I can understand how you would be upset," or "How can I help?" After all, being right is not the issue, but making an attempt to get it right is. When encouraging a person to talk or vent their frustrations, you'll often help lower the emotional charge. And if there's no one arguing against them or trying to silence them, most people will begin to run out of steam in a relatively short time. The truth is, it's hard to have an argument when only one person is arguing. If time allows, it's a good idea to anticipate and plan for situations that have a reasonable probability of becoming confrontational. In those cases, be sure to include others in your planning efforts. If you sense a situation is moving beyond your ability to manage or becoming dangerous to you, the person, or to others, be sure you know the emergency procedures for your location. Safety for everyone involved is paramount. If you suspect the person is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, it's important to be cautious in your approach since they're often more prone to harming you, themselves, and others. Since drugs and alcohol impair judgment, decrease inhibitions, and distort reasoning ability, it's better to reach out to the person in a non-aggressive manner. Stay away from accusations and avoid judgmental comments such as, "You're not making sense." Protect yourself with appropriate distance and avoid being surrounded or cornered. Always have a plan to escape. Let's take these principles and apply them to a situation from earlier.
Good morning, Victoria. How are you feeling today?
Not very good. My stomach still really hurts.
What the hell's the matter with you people? Where have you been? I've been here a week and you still have no idea what's wrong with my daughter.
Sir, I'm sorry. You seem upset.
And we've been here nearly a week and you still have no idea what's wrong with Vicky. You come in and you poke and you prod and you test some more. And you're making no progress and nobody will tell me what's going on.
I really want to help. So what can I do?
Can you just tell me what's going on? I mean, have we made any progress?
We can absolutely do that. I will go get the doctor and have him come and give you an update. Is there anything else that I can do?
Can you check on us more often? And even if there's no news, it's just nice to know we're not alone.
We can do that. We also have a really great patient advocate group. Have you spoken with them yet?
No, I didn't know that was a thing. Can they help?
It's their job to help and to be a resource for you. Would it be okay if I introduced you to someone?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank Thank you.
Vicky, hang tight. We'll be right back.
Be back.
Did you catch the differences between this situation and the one from earlier? The nurse's body language was much better. She was more relaxed, kept her hands down, and didn't allow herself to make any expressions that could be perceived as sarcastic. Her verbal communication was also much improved. Her volume, tone, speed, and inflection were a much more calming influence, and when combined with effective phrases such as, "I can see how you'd be upset," she was able to effectively acknowledge the father's issues and diffuse the situation. Even with efforts to verbally calm a situation, it's possible that it could escalate into physical aggression. As a healthcare professional, you embrace a duty of care commitment that compels you to also be a protector. If you feel your safety is threatened, you need to reposition and regain your personal security so you can figure out how to manage the situation and limit harm to surrounding patients and personnel. If someone does make unwanted contact, break contact, and create space between you and the aggressor, seek assistance and notify security. Afterwards, make sure to follow your organization's procedures for reporting these incidents. In the previous section, you learned the principles of de-escalation. But what do you do if de-escalation doesn't work and an aggressor becomes an assailant? Or if there's an intruder determined to hurt people? We've now come to the part of this program we hope you'll never be faced with: surviving an extreme violence event. When someone says extreme violence, the first thing to come to mind is likely an active shooter. And while an active shooter is the most common example, it's not the only one. Knives, baseball bats, speeding vehicles, improvised explosive devices, and many others have been used to carry out acts of extreme violence. While we'll use the example of an active shooter for training purposes, you can apply this information to effectively respond to any form of extreme violence. From studies of workplace shootings, we know that many of these incidents are over quickly. There's a period of time between the onset of extreme violence and the arrival of law enforcement, which we call the extreme danger gap, meaning those in the workplace may be the first line of defense in dealing with an armed intruder. Survivors are committed to doing whatever it takes. View your work environment using a survival lens. Ask yourself questions such as, how will I survive an incident if it happens in my workplace? What will I do? What are my options? These questions prepare you to become stakeholders in your own safety and security. This is especially true for healthcare professionals. As mentioned earlier, you embrace a duty of care commitment that compels you to be a survivor and a protector. There are many things you can do to survive and protect others during an active shooter incident. The most effective option starts right now with developing a survivor-protector mindset. The survivor-protector mindset is what you learn and nurture when you train for the unthinkable. It includes the willingness to accept the possibility that you could find yourself in a life-threatening situation with split-second choices to make. For example, if you hear a code or emergency announcement over the PA system and it appears the danger is relatively far away, you'll still need to take steps to protect your patients and yourself. You'll need to assess the situation and move quickly. You basically have three options: run, hide, or fight. If you're in imminent danger, your actions need to be immediate. If you determine you can get out to a safer area, get as far away from the shooter as you can, especially if it means you'll be able to get help. If there are people you can guide to safety while also taking shelter yourself, do so quickly and with authority. Don't wait for others to validate your decision and leave your belongings behind. The best way to survive an active shooter situation is not to be where the shooter is and not go where they can see you. Be sure to call the appropriate authorities once you've reached a safe location. If your facility has panic buttons or silent alarms, use them as quickly as possible. When in imminent danger, your actions need to be immediate. If you're unable to get out of the area, your next best option may be to hide out. Are you alone or are there others near you? What's their mobility? Can they help you and themselves? Are you near patient rooms equipped with fire doors that may offer protection? Do you know which rooms can be locked from the inside? Any room that can be locked is a potential shelter. If there are interior windows, be sure to block them if you can and turn out the lights to make the room appear unoccupied. In patient rooms, beds with locking breaks can be used as barricades to keep the shooter out. If you're trapped in an open area with no real hiding options and no means of exit, try to put something, anything, between yourself and the shooter. If there are two or more of you, resist the urge to huddle together. Instead, try to spread out and plan to work as a team to overcome the shooter if necessary. Directly confronting the shooter is a last resort and a critical decision only you can make. Most rooms are full of things that can be effective tools for defense. Yelling and throwing objects can startle, distract, impair, or even injure the attacker. Remember, they're only fully armed while they still have use of their hands. They may have the gun, but if you control their hands, they won't be able to use it. When fighting for your life and the life of others, survivors will do whatever it takes to stop the threat. And here is something you probably never thought about. If you or others had to directly confront an assailant and you have successfully disarmed that person, whatever you do, don't pick up that weapon. Otherwise, you might be seen as a threat to authorities when they arrive. Following the arrival of first responders, the extreme danger gap ends, but it's still a very dangerous situation until they succeed in ending the violence. And it's important to be aware that they'll have no way of knowing immediately whether or not you're a threat, even if you're wearing scrubs or a uniform. The officers have been taught that hands kill, so show your hands and follow their instructions. Survivor protectors quickly assess the situation to figure out the best response. They act with confidence and commitment and alert authorities to others in danger. There's no greater contribution you can make to the safety of your workplace than to respond quickly and effectively to behaviors of concern, regardless of who's exhibiting them. Be aware of the situations and the people around you so you can recognize the early warning signs that violence might be brewing, and be prepared and committed to take action as soon as it's required. Remember, you can make a difference. Congratulations, you've completed the Workplace Violence Prevention and Response Awareness e-learning course for healthcare providers.
All right. If I could get you to turn your cameras on so I can see your smiling faces. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I really like, this used to be two separate videos and they've now integrated into one that covers the entire spectrum. There's a couple of things that, because this company makes this video and sells it across the country to healthcare organizations, there's a couple of pieces that I want to also cover that are not exactly accurate for Washington State. Workplace violence, the definition of workplace violence in Washington State in a healthcare setting under the RCW is the one that I showed you in the PowerPoint. Verbal threat to an employee of the healthcare setting, or a physical assault, whether it's involving a weapon, not a weapon, commonly used object, or regardless of whether that weapon usage results in injury or not to the healthcare worker. But for it to be workplace violence in Washington, the healthcare worker has to be the victim. So yes, there is violence if two visitors are harming each other, two patients are harming each other, but under Washington state law, that's not workplace violence. One of us has to be the victim in order for it to be classified as workplace violence. It'll still be classified as an assault or harassment or those other things that they talked about in categories. And if you are experiencing those things, yes, it falls into the realm of workplace violence, and the resources that I would provide to you and your team are still going to be the same. Regardless of the level of violence, it's you know, what we offer staff to be safe is still the same. The other thing is that they did not cover this time, I noticed, is that some work areas are outfitted with what's called panic switches or duress alarms. I believe there's one mounted at the front desk in HIPRC underneath the desk. It's a silent alarm. It sends a silent alarm to security. Please only use that for active violence or an immediate threat of harm. If you flip the panic switch, we're going to divert the majority of our resources to you because we think that staff is being hurt. And that is one of the highest priority calls for response for security on this campus, is a panic switch activation. If you're able, again, on the back of your photo ID, you should have a WISHA code card. On the other side, there'll be the commonly used phone numbers at Harborview, and the non-emergency and emergency number to security is on this card. You should also have those on your workstations. You can put them on the auto dialer on your desk phones, into your cell phone. So if you're commuting to work and you need us to meet you at the bus in front of the building, then we can certainly do that. Those are the other resources we want to have for you. All right. The last 15 minutes is for all of you so that I can answer any questions you may have. What did you think of our new video? Brand new, you're the first to see it. Give me a thumbs up. Somebody give me thumbs up or on my emojis or something. Good. I really liked it. It was so much more detailed, and just, you know, every time they create a new version, it was intense, Lauren. But you know, I mean, I don't know any other way to teach them other than be transparent. We're living in a pretty intense world right now. We really are. And, you know, what we're trying to accomplish in security is just to make sure that our staff have the education and the knowledge they need to be as safe as possible. Coming to and from work, at work, I really hope next year is a better year for us. I get that things were really difficult. The anxiety and stress in the Tri-County area is pretty high right now. It's pretty high. So yes, the second half was definitely more helpful. Yes, you do have a panic button and HIPRC at the front desk.
And actually, that's I had my hand raised.
Oh, okay.
Robert,
I'll go to
I
you, then Elizabeth.
I wasn't aware of that either. And is there any way to check whether it's in working order and that without actually flipping the switch?
Engineering tests those on a regular basis.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, there's like, I mean, I want to say there's like 150 in the Pat Steele building, the majority of which are downstairs at outpatient mental health. The one for HIPRC is underneath the front desk. As soon as you walk into HIPRC, the greeter desk, there should be one underneath there. It's a white toggle switch. The way it works is you just stick your finger in it and pull down. It doesn't make a sound. It just sends a silent alarm to security. But that tells us that basically that staff's being heard and get here right now. So if you're able to call us, we prefer phone calls because we want to triage calls. That way, if we're not pulling officers off of other crisis calls that should really remain where they are. So phone calls are better, but if you have to flip it and then get behind a locked door and then call us, absolutely, that is a great way to go. Elizabeth, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I want to put my hand down here. Let me just do that. Love the Zoom features. So I have two questions, Robert, and I just want to shout out to you for all of the support that you've given us on the Harborview campus over the years. It's just really, your dedication is just unparalleled and so appreciated, and I always recommend you.
Thank you.
To everybody. But so the first question is, there was that brief segment about domestic violence and its effects in the workplace, or how it shows up in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, we have a lot of women going through our training programs, and I have personally been privy to situations of domestic violence in their home life. And I'm just wondering, I would like to be able to know what resources, if any, Harborview or the UW has that, we can recommend when those trainees share that information with us, or it's obvious that there's, there's something going on and they can't avoid it. They're missing, they have to call, they're coming in late, or they come in and they're very distraught, etc. What are the go-to resources for that? That's my first question.
Me?
You?
I provide domestic violence advocacy to staff and emergency safety planning. If they're a UW employee, I can tie them into free resources through the University of Washington. If they're not a UW employee, I can still do emergency safety planning and provide safety education for them and assist them in tools and things to be safe inside of work and outside of work. The goal of what we're trying to accomplish is to make sure that, one, that they feel like they have a platform and a voice and a place that they can speak up and say that they're going through something, where they're not feeling isolated and alone. One of the top three categories, unfortunately, for an active shooter situation, the top one is actually an employee going through domestic violence. You guys may remember 6-7 years ago, there was a shooting at Deaconess Hospital in Eastern Washington. There was an oncology nurse there who was going through domestic violence with her husband. And on a sunny morning, after a fight, she came to work, and a few hours later, he came to the hospital at Deaconess and calmly rode on the elevator up to the 7th floor and walked onto the oncology floor and pulled out a gun and shot and killed his wife, and then shot and killed himself. So we really try to make sure that we encourage staff, if they are going through something, to let us know. My resources are free. I just set up a time for them to come over and have them sit down with me, and I'll do an assessment of how serious their situation is, and then I'll tie them into the resources that they need to be safe. And again, if they're a UW employee, I can tie them into additional free resources through University of Washington because of their UW employment. If not, we'll find something to be able to provide them to help them. And it's really about just making sure people have a voice. And strangely enough, it's not always a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner situation. I mean, I usually have 4 or 5 of those cases going on at any given time in my office. And the last one was a colleague who has a restraining order out against her sister because her sister has mental health issues and it made threats to kill family members. And, she said she was going to come to the workplace, and there's lots of things we can do to help mitigate that situation when we know about a potential threat and we can plan in advance to help isolate that employee and keep them safe. I've gotten pretty creative over the last 20 years in helping staff with ways to be safe. In the most extreme case, I actually, a colleague who used to work here, she doesn't work here anymore. I actually had another manager give her an office in a totally different department on a totally different floor while she went through her divorce for 9 months, just so that he couldn't find her. And then escorts to and from her car to the parking garage, things like that. So there's lots of things we can do to support our staff and help them feel connected and safe. And so if they are going through something like that and they're interested, please send them my way. I'm in the UW directory. Christine has my contact info. I'd be happy to assist them.
Great, thank you. The
Mhm.
second question is about patient microaggressions towards staff on either in person or telemedicine visits in the outpatient setting. I want to be able to role model appropriate responses for trainees, and again, this does come up, and it may be that it's directed at me, or it may be an interaction that I hear about that I haven't observed with a patient when the trainee is working with that person, where I'm precepting them. And my guess is with those kinds of hostilities or some of it's microaggression, out of control behavior. My guess is that this is like an offense that is happening repeatedly. Is
Mhm.
there a method similar to like the care plans for patients like this? And how do we register concerns so that they get into the form of a care plan if one would be appropriate in that kind of situation?
Well, there's a couple of different steps. So the first thing we do is we start by having staff document even low-level behaviors in PSN.
Okay.
We get that PSN documentation in, and then we will have the background to assess what has this person done in other settings around UW medicine. If you feel like it's a direct threat of harm, whether it's by telemedicine or my chart messages or in person, you document that in PSN, send me an email, tell me you've had an encounter with a patient and you're requesting an assessment of this person. And what I'll do is look in the database around UW medicine and see, has this person done this behavior during treatment in other parts of UW medicine? If it's threats of harm or acts of violence, then we would probably be looking at a safe alert care plan. But if it's inappropriate behavior, like what we have seen, we've seen an increasing rise since 2016 in racial, religious, and inappropriate sexual behavior directed at staff at Harborview Medical Center. And so we want to make sure that we are communicating to other care team members who engage with that client and provide treatment through the use of putting proper care plans in the chart. So even if it's low-level behavior, we can draft a care plan that identifies what that issue was, what the behavior was to the healthcare worker. Then we can draft a care plan, get it in the chart. Depending on the severity of the event, it could be an alert care plan, it could be a safe alert care plan, or it could be just a care plan. The people who currently have access under our EPIC system to enter care plans in the medical record are providers, nurse managers, clinic managers, and social workers. So I would coordinate with you and pull together a small multidisciplinary team to assess what was the behavior directed at the healthcare worker, and then what do we want to put in the chart. We just had an upgrade to EPIC a couple of weeks ago on Sunday. And previously, before that upgrade, you used to look on the storyboard under notices and see that the word, care plan, CPLN in black or red, or safe was there. Notices has been retired by the Epic system. Now, currently, you'll see something called Alert FYIs. And the Alert FYI will tell you whether or not this is a care plan, an alert care plan, or a safe alert care plan. Just remember that safe alert care plans are always about past behaviors of violence to healthcare workers in UW medicine. So that safe alert care plans also require me to do an assessment for the Workplace Violence Committee and assist the care team with developing the proper strategies with a multidisciplinary group to really look at what's going on with this client. Are they just not a nice person? Is this related to a condition that we're actually treating them for? Is there something contributing to that behavior? Do they have a traumatic brain injury or something, that neurological issue that could be the source of that? Because we want to make sure that we're looking at the right strategies to put in a care plan, so that if at 2 o'clock in the morning, your patient decides to go over to Northwest Hospital's emergency room, they will see the care plan and know what they did to other staff members, and they will know the most successful way to engage with that client based on what you put in that care plan. Now, another thing that you want to do if you're using Epic and you go into the chart is that you don't just stop at looking at the patient chart advisory when you open the chart. You're going to want to go to chart review, patient station, the chart review, until you see all the tabs across the top. And you're going to want to click on the FYI tab. And the reason you want to click on the FYI tab is because when we migrated to Epic D1 across UW Medicine, now Harborview, UWMC, Montlake, Northwest, and all the clinics throughout primary care and population health are all on the same medical record system. So now you have patients who've been seen in multiple parts of our system who have multiple care plans. Another reason you want to go in and look at these care plans before you're in treatment rooms with clients, I write about 50 to 75 care plans a year for social work for patients who are registered sex offenders. Not to say that they're a bad person. Care plans are not meant to be punitive in nature. They're meant to communicate information between care teams so that we can make proper engagements and strategies when we're talking to patients, and we are doing it in a way that keeps us safe, but we're providing the right care to that person. So if you see multiple care plans under the FYI, you're going to want to go in and read all of them, starting with the safes, and then go to the care plans. Now, to make this just a little bit more challenging for you, and I don't know how you'll operationalize this, is that when we decommission those old medical record systems, Sorian, Epic, or excuse me, Mindscape, Orca, Cerner, all these other ones that we dumped into Epic, not all the care plans migrated over easily into Epic. So what enterprise-wide records and information did was that they created a button on the page after you go into chart advisories called LK Archive. And if you click on the LK Archive button, it's going to open up another window where you can access those old decommissioned databases. You'll go to the left-hand side where you see the brown bar and scroll down to Documents, double-click on Documents, and then in the top bar where it says Document Type, you're going to click the drop-down and look for Alert Care Plan. If you see that box there, click it and hit Enter, and it will bring up care plans written in those old decommissioned databases that may be relevant information that you need to know. I had a care team reach out to me just this week about this, and they said, we don't see anything in their medical record. Has this person done anything? Can you check your other databases? So I'm going to look in PSN for both Harborview, Montlake, primary care and population health. I'm going to look in the security databases of all 4 hospitals to see if security has had encounters being called by clinical staff to engage with a client who has been disruptive or threatening or assaultive. And I'm going to pull all that documentation to look into an assessment. Then I also go into the LK Archive. And last week I found a 2007, 2006 care plan talking about the patient's significant mental health issues with bipolar manic depression and undocumented other mental health conditions at the time, and what was the most effective strategies back then. So what I want, the new care teams to look at is what was successful in the past, what past documentation and care plans have we used before, and now let's update that care plan based on the recommendations of the current care team, and also based on documentation on what we have seen this person do. What have they done recently? Because this is going to happen. Our clients tend to jump around the system, and um, we tend to see them access care in lots of different venues. They don't get what they want in one place, so they go to another place, and they create a trail of behaviors when staff start documenting PSN and the security databases. And then I can access those to say, well, they punched a nurse over at UWMC Montlakes emergency room, and they shoved a security officer at Northwest Hospital, and they threatened a provider at Valley Medical Center, and then they did this at Harborview. Okay, well, what was going on with the patient at the time of the violence? Is it related to the condition we're treating them for? And then let's have the care team assess, looking at that documentation, what's the best way to engage with this client. Now, there are times, even here at Harborview, where care teams will say, you know what, we're not going to treat this person anymore. Their care has been terminated. They're going to request that the care be terminated from Harborview. If it's a termination of care for violence, those have to come to me, because I have to go to our medical director and get approval to terminate that person's care from Harborview Medical Center. And it still does not stop them from accessing our emergency room, because the EMTALA laws do not allow us to deny access to emergency care to anybody. So what it is it more than likely will restrict access to inpatient treatment and outpatient treatment. And the way that looks in the medical record is a little bit different these days, because we just recently updated our policies on what a termination of care, how that looks, how it reflects in the EHR. So again, just reach out to me if you have a patient case like that. And that is a really long-winded answer, but that's the full answer.
Thank you.
I think I blew up the chat here. Let's see. Let me scroll back to where we were at. Did I miss anything? Are we doing anything about lighting and perimeter security? Yes. We have updated some of the lighting at Pat Steele, both in the garages and around the campus. Also over in between Harborview Hall and our R&T building. Do the security phone numbers receive text messages? No, they do not, but I would be happy to. It's actually better to call a security dispatcher, because they're going to be able to send the officer that's closest to you. So they don't do text message, but that's a good question. Let's see, confidential advocates for you. Safe Campus can help you, but they have changed their hours. Safe Campus is now Monday through Friday during business hours only. They're not 24/7 anymore. And if it's on the Harborview campus, you're probably going to be better off contacting me directly, because Harborview security is 24/7, and I could make sure that all shifts of security are aware of whatever the emergency safety planning we have for that employee. And then I also can connect them with additional counseling and DV advocacy through the University of Washington's Live Well program, which is through the college for students and faculty. They actually have DV advocates that are for different cultures, cultural DV advocates. And I have that information as well that I can offer a person going through DV. And then we would, connect with the care team and the manager to let them know what the safety plan is for that employee. Can you please put those stat info? Okay, good. Did somebody put the stat info back in? I think we did. Yes. Good to update. Okay. My pleasure. Did I cover anything? Because we went a few minutes over, but I can stay and continue to answer questions if you have them. Looks like about half of our people dropped off. Security phone numbers in the chat? Yes, absolutely. I can do that. So the non-emergency. And then the emergency.